A roamer over this whole world over.
From the therapist, we have mentioned several times and will be mentioning over and over again those 4 words. What upholds your existence?
As happy as me, you'll never see. Represent for the peaks, represent for the streets.
Our coat of arms. I've said so many times that everything begins through the senses. We become aware of something through our senses, and then it triggers off emotional memories, and then the mind perceives all of that in some way. It not only works through our senses, but also through words, because words certainly are connected to our senses. So when I look at coat of arms, instantaneously I see the face of a dear departed friend, Mo Foley, who was a rousing Irish spirit. And Mo had a fixation, a love for the Irish and their coat of arms. In fact, he was the first one who plugged me into the whole idea of coat of arms. In fact, he spent a good deal of his free time researching his family's coat of arms and tracing it back through the ages and how it was formed and what it meant. He went so far as to even have it in Gaelic. And I don't know if any of you have ever heard the Gaelic language. Yeah. It's quite unusual. It's
lots of consonants.
Oh, yeah. But anyway, he plugged me into the idea of the coat of arms and what it stands for. And I've thought about it a great deal over many, many decades, because in a way it basically represents what you think, what you believe, who you are, what you've done in life. And it's something that you would like to believe would carry on after you've gone. And I think that's another part of the coat of arms idea, that it's traditional, and as opposed to just being personalized for a period of an individual's life. And what I've listed here are examples of a very general coat of arms, and I have in there / hypocrisy, because a coat of arms certainly should represent what truly is the individual or the group or the family. It should really have meaning that's truthful. And I have found since I was a child that so much of it is not meaningful, not honest, not truthful. I begin with God, country, and honor, which certainly is a typical coat of arms for many nations. You'll hear that term, God, country, and honor. And it sounds good, but I wonder how many people live accordingly, as opposed to our bombs bursting in air in our national anthem. Somehow those two never jive for me. And I think I've mentioned it before. I have a hard time standing up for the Star-Spangled Banner because I can't accept that idea of bombs bursting in air being representative of what our nation is supposed to be about. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of our teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. These are the words at the base of the Statue of Liberty. I remember the first time I actually saw those words, I was deeply moved, as I'm sure tens of millions of people have been, when you realize that so many people came from different countries during the wave of immigration to America, and one of the first sights that touched all those people was the Statue of Liberty, and then reading those words, I'm sure, affected people in many, many ways. But I have a hard time with them now because in opposition to them, we have the mentality of get yours, stick it to them, and take the money and run. Now, a lot of this might sound guttural in a way, and quite extreme, but I like to look at things not as the image presents, but as it really is. What is the truth? And the people who came to this country, certainly they didn't all believe that the streets were paved with gold, as they might have been told, but they came here because they needed a new beginning, a new life. They were impoverished. They came to America with the hope that this would be the opportunity for them to start a new life. And what they were greeted with was not too positive. After they left Ellis Island, they went into particular areas of America and found a place usually among their own people. It's not only that we have Chinatowns throughout America, but we had German towns, Little Italies, the Greek zone, the Polish zone. People stayed in their own kind of setting with their own people by and large. And if they stepped outside of that area, they weren't really welcomed. And they weren't welcomed in terms of how they were looked upon by people and labeled. The Spanish, the Puerto Ricans in my neighborhood were called spics. The Italians were wops or dagos. The Greeks were greaseballs. The Irish were micks. And these were not meant to be, affection type words. It was meant to designate people and put them down. And of course the blacks were, called all sorts of things. And as late as 1951, 52, when I moved to Brooklyn, in fact, you didn't see any black people. And any time you did, they'd be stared at. And you would assume they were there as servants for people. Now, we're not talking about 1850 or, we're talking about mid-1900s. Matter of fact, people don't realize this. Until 1955, 56, segregation existed in the military service. In our Army, Navy, Air Force, absolute segregation. It wasn't until President Eisenhower just changed that. He sent out an executive order to the military saying you must desegregate immediately. But it took until 1956, even for our military, to desegregate. And I was overseas at the time, and it was rough. The first non-white people who came into our squadron were greeted with some terrible, terrible challenges. And were it not for a commanding officer who was very, very aware of how dangerous the situation was and how bad what it could lead to, we might have had a very serious outbreak of violence and worse, perhaps. But our commanding officer was a very wise man, and he set the record straight for everyone very, very quickly and said, anyone who steps out of bounds on this one is going to hear from me personally. And after that, everything settled down, but it took all of that time. So, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free was a wonderful slogan, a wonderful coat of arms, but it didn't really affect the realities of our country and its racism and its negativity towards so many people who came here. The Pledge of Allegiance, now I don't know if they do that in schools anymore, do they?
No, they're not allowed to.
They're not allowed to.
My daughter does, actually.
They do?
Mm-hmm.
Which school is that?
Beacon Hill International School.
Oh, see, it's a private school.
It's not. It's a public school.
Really? Because I thought they weren't allowed to do it in the public schools anymore.
I wondered about that one when I was young.
Just like you can't pray. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And you can't have images of Santa Claus or all sorts of things. That's
Oh, crap.
we
should have them all, Nick.
We should.
Yes.
I know. But anyway, the Pledge of Allegiance, as opposed to Kill them Injuns, hang the black man from a tree, and torture them in Guantanamo Bay. The Joe Louis and Muhammad Ali stories, as opposed to the lies and distortions that have been passed along as truths. I mentioned this to you, Sandy, yesterday, and I want to mention it again. How many people know the background of Joe Louis and Muhammad Ali? You might know Muhammad Ali. He's more recent, of course, and he's alive, and he's considered a worldwide icon. Joe Louis came before him. Joe Louis was the heavyweight champion of the world in 1937, 38, through about 1945. And he was a unique individual for many reasons. For one thing, he took on all comers. Unlike most boxing champions who, once they become champions, they're very careful about who they box because they don't want to lose their title. So they tend to just go where they're safe and where the money is, and very often the top fighters in contention don't get a crack at the title because of that. But Louis said, bring them on. He had what was known as the Bum of the Month Club, and every month another fighter would come and challenge him and would go down. Anyway, Louis was the champion, and he fought the German champion, Max Schmeling. And Schmeling shocked the boxing world by knocking Louis out. And of course, this was a huge, huge thing in Germany. Hitler and the Nazis built it up tremendously, the idea of the German champion beating the American black champion. And it caused a tremendous emotional response among people throughout the world. Now, you've got to realize that at that time, Germany was overrunning all of Europe, literally, and America was still isolationist. We refused to be involved. After the First World War, everyone said, no more. We're not going to go to another war in Europe. So you had a situation where the Nazis are using a new form of warfare called the Blitzkrieg, and are overrunning one country after the other and literally endangering the whole world. And America's just standing back, refusing to do anything. Franklin Roosevelt, the president, basically had to lie to Congress about his efforts to save Great Britain, because under the way we were doing business with the world then, there was no reason, we had no right to be sending armaments or money or aid to England, which was under attack. So the world was really in turmoil. And in those years, whenever a champion lost a fight, there was always a clause stating that he had the right to a rematch. It was almost automatic. So Schmeling signed to fight Louis again in America, and Louis knocked him out in the first round. Now, you cannot possibly imagine the emotional effect, the impact it had on America. It was literally the turning point in the Second World War period. Because up until that point, again, we were just lying back. We weren't going to be involved. But when Louis knocked out Schmeling, the whole country suddenly came alive and became aware of what was going on in Europe. And all the historians pointed it out that if there was any one figure in America that was responsible for turning us around, it was Joe Louis. What happened to Joe Louis? Well, Pearl Harbor happened in 1941. We were attacked by the Japanese, and the next day Hitler declared war on America. Most people don't know that. If you ask the average person today how that all came about, they would have assumed that we declared war on Germany. No. Hitler declared war on us. That's the only reason we got involved in the European battle. And Joe Louis, like all other able-bodied men, was called into duty. And they decided to take advantage of Joe Louis's popularity. Instead of sending him out to fight, they decided to send him out to fight in the ring and raise money for various causes like the Army and Navy. And Lewis went on tour and raised tens of millions of dollars for American causes related to military servicemen. And consequently, when Lewis retired, like so many champions in those years, he didn't have much money. And he liked to play golf, and the golf sharks took everything he had, and subsequently he was broke. And then the United States government went after him. The IRS went after him. And to make a very long story short, his life was basically destroyed by the IRS and the government that he had done so much to help preserve. He was the man who had turned our country around emotionally. He was the person who went out, and raised money for the Army and Navy. And then the IRS said, "You owe us taxes on that." The money wasn't for him, but they demanded that he pay taxes on that. He died broke. And it was another example connected to the coat of arms that you took this great champion, and after he did so much for the country, you go after him. Now, the juxtaposition between him and Muhammad Ali is a very, very clear one. Ali was much brighter than Joe Louis. And when it came time to standing up to the government, which Joe Louis couldn't do, he never could. He should have turned to the American press and say, "Hey, guys, you called me a great champion. I did my service. I helped in whatever way. I need your help now. I'm being hounded." But he didn't. He didn't stand up for himself. He couldn't. And Ali not only could, but he did. When it came time for him to be sworn in and go into the army and probably go to Vietnam and fight, Ali said, "Nope. I'll beat him up in the ring, but I won't kill him in Vietnam. I got nothing against those people." And of course, Ali was stripped of his title. He lost the most important part of his career. The peak years of his career as a fighter were lost. And he was pretty much denounced by everyone in the country, including the black community. But he stood up for what he believed in. Consequently, Ali became this idolized figure. In fact, I think in not this past Olympics, but in the Olympics before, we asked him to carry the American flag, which he did. So you look at all of this, the framework of all of these words and slogans and ideals, God and country, the Pledge of Allegiance, and all of the rest, and you have to take a look at it and say, well, what does that really mean in terms of our lives and how we see ourselves in our society, in our community, in our own personal lives? The history of the Native American Indian, as opposed to all the tributes to our great nation, I have a hard time with people who call America a great nation. When I look at what actually happened. And when I look at what actually happened, what strikes me is that it's been so long, and in all of these decades, in these hundreds of years, we have yet to actually apologize to the Native American Indians. No American president has ever taken the opportunity to call a national day of mourning, to get everyone focused, close the schools, have everyone focused, joint session of Congress, Supreme Court, everyone, and hear him or her apologize for what we did to the Native American Indians. We have Holocaust museums all over the country, but we have never apologized for what we did. And I think that scar, that national scar, is a guilt that we carry with us, not just as a nation, but as individuals. Just knowing that the basis of the foundation of our country was stealing, killing, destroying the dignity of a nation of people. And how we can ever ignore that is beyond my imagination. How we can call ourselves a great nation, how we could put up all of these monuments and all of these slogans and the pledges of allegiance and God, country, and the rest, and ignore that basic reality is, to me, it just can never ever make any sense, can never ever be anything other than what it is, a terrible scar. And I don't know when anyone will have the courage to finally stand up and actually say something. I was introduced to the Boy Scout laws, more slogans, more words, which I believe, by the way. Every Monday at that Scout meeting, we would recite those laws. A Scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent, as opposed to the business as usual mentality of society. And as a Boy Scout, I believed it. I was telling Barbara a little while ago that up until very recently, I'd never joined any organization except the Boy Scouts. And the Boy Scouts had a fundamental understanding of things that they tried to live by. And I believed in it. And unfortunately, those words do not carry over the way they should to the rest of the nation. The various religions presiding over their spiritual teachings, but under examination they abide by their worldly ambitions. My daughter went to Italy a few years back and visited the Vatican. And when she came home, she sat with me and just shook her head. She said, I couldn't believe the wealth I saw. The art and the paintings, just only in terms of what you could actually see, what is hidden and what in the vaults and the rest, God only knows. God only knows.
Yeah, right.
I didn't mean that as a pun.
Yeah.
But what she described was really shocking when you think of how much poverty there is, how much illness there is, how many young people, are starving, dying throughout the world. And here you have this edifice, this church, with billions and billions in treasure. I don't know if you know, they made a movie some years ago with Anthony Quinn, who's kind of a peasant cardinal who becomes the Pope. And he decides to give everything away.
Oh, really?
It was quite an astonishing idea.
Do you know the name of that, Nick?
I don't remember, but I will find out. But it's
I
Anthony
love
Quinn.
Anthony.
Yeah. We are a nation of laws, not people, similar to the military law of respect the uniform, not the person. My first day in the military service, I heard that one. An officer spelled that out for us and said, always remember this. You respect the rank, the title, not the person. And I was 17 years old. What's that? How could that be? Well, you're telling me if this guy here happens to be a captain or a major, but is a real lunatic, I should respect him. That makes no sense to me. I couldn't add that up in my mind. The math simply didn't work. And in the military, you see certain things that are shocking to begin with. I flew with some crews who were strange people, to say the least. And one of them was a general who was as loony as anyone could be. But yet you had to respect this man because he was a general. You're reading all the things about the latest scandal, military scandal with this same kind of thing. You wonder now, 4-star general doing such dumb things. And this again is part of the same scheme of coat of arms and rituals and slogans and words that seem to take away completely from the idea of the human being and what the human being is supposed to be. Our Constitution acts as a very broad-based coat of arms. But what does it really represent? If I had my druthers, I would start a third political party with one objective in mind, and that objective would be to rewrite the Constitution. Because I'm of the mind that until we actually rewrite that very old and archaic document, we don't stand a chance of changing anything that's going on in society. Because the way it is written and the way it is interpreted by a select group of lawyers limits everything that can be done. And until that Constitution is rewritten, we're stuck where we are. The people who control the country, the deep pockets of the chemical industry, the pharmaceutical industry, supported by the legal industry and the insurance industry and all the other big corporations, have a hold on everything. And there's no way you can break that. It's really money controls everything. And because the lawyers control the interpretation of the Constitution and the Supreme Court in turn does the same, nothing can be changed. Even if you had the brightest individual in the White House with great imagination and great human instinct and character, which is far from the case. But even if you had such a saintly individual in the White House, he or she could not do anything to change the course of this nation, and perhaps the course of the world as a result of that. Freedom is thought of and accepted as a central part of America's coat of arms, but how far does that freedom actually extend? Not as far as it should, hardly. I'd like to think that each and every one of us has the right to express what we feel and what we believe without being put down, beaten up, jailed, whatever. But the truth is, you can't really do things that way. It's not only a matter of using common sense and discernment, it's a matter of basic reality. As I mentioned in the past, we were in Quilcene this summer. We took a summer home, and they had an event in town, a musical event. There were about 500 people there. And before the program started, everyone had to get up while someone sang the national anthem. Now, what would have happened to me or anyone who didn't stand up? They would have been in trouble. They probably would have gotten their teeth kicked in and arrested for causing a disturbance. So how free can we be? We're as free as we have the right to go into a ballot, into somewhere and vote every 2 and every 4 years. Is that really what freedom is about? Merely being able to vote for whom? For a group, a select group of people, usually lawyers, who have a lot of money? Is that what freedom is about? I don't think so. I really don't. Equality is supposed to be a cornerstone in our coat of arms. Is it? Are we in fact equal? I don't think we ever have been. The Indians certainly weren't equal. And those people who came on board those boats and passed the Statue of Liberty and went to Ellis Island and then dispersed all over the country, to be treated in the way that many of them were, I don't think they found that equality as a cornerstone in America. Now, a lot of people might hear me say these things and say, well, we're better than anyone else. And that might be true. In comparison, we've done a lot of good things, but to me, that's not the ideal. Merely comparing ourselves is like saying our country has less malaria than neighboring country, or our country only has 2.5 million people in prison, China has 4 million people, whatever it might be. I don't think we should be looking at things according to comparisons, but rather to what we really believe in, what the ideal should be. When it comes down to it, what really is the truth? What are we really about? And although I've been speaking to the whole idea of society and the country, now it comes down to us, and this is the purpose of the whole thing. And the purpose of this whole series of classes is really about us. And I've been saying repeatedly, the only thing that's important, the main objective, is how do we apply everything we talk about? How do we apply it to our own life? As opposed to more sloganizing, more coat of arms kind of thing. How do we apply these things? And it's my greatest worry, because I see so many people who simply don't apply what they believe in, what they know, who they are, who they want to be. And I think we have to focus completely on that in order to move ahead. It doesn't mean it's going to change our society or change our world. It means that the change begins with us as individuals, and then hopefully affects our family and our nearest community, and it works from that point on. I don't think we're going to change the nation, or change our politics, or change the Constitution. It would take 12 to 14 years to even get that to the point where there could be a constitutional Congress. That's how difficult it would be, believe it or not. And as an example of that, how many of you remember the efforts made to create equal rights for women? That went on, I think, for 16 years and failed. Failed. The amendment for equal rights for women was never passed by 35 states to allow it to actually be adopted as an amendment. So we haven't come that far. And it's set up that way that we can't go any further, unfortunately. So we're limited to what we can do for us, the individual. So let's go to that part of it. Spell it out in simple, truthful words, the design, theme, colors, etc. Think about who you are, what your coat of arms is, what's the truth for each of us. Mo came up with his in Gaelic, and it was a lot of fun listening to him describe it, and he, spent more money than he spent on anything in his life getting all of these things together. It was like how people collect stamps and stuff like that. Mo collected coat of arms. So what are our coat of arms? What really would tell anyone who we're about, and what we're about, and how we live our lives? Is it something more than a philosophy or an image? And it certainly should be. Come on in, Bob, grab a seat. It certainly should be more than just a philosophy, because it's not really honest to just talk about things on a philosophical level. One of my gripes with the classes that we've held over the years with people who I've confronted has been that for too many people, what we're talking about really is simply an intellectual or philosophical or even spiritual examination of things, as opposed to the actual true application within our own lives. So here we're talking about this coat of arms. How was it created? What was it forged by? Can you live up to it? Does it guide the way you live, love, and create? Do your friends, family know your coat of arms? Is it respected? Would you give your life for it? How far would you go? Muhammad Ali went pretty far. He said, no. Take what I have, take my reputation, take my ability to earn a living, but I'm not doing what you want me to do. I'm not going to go and pick up a gun and start shooting people. So how far would we go to actually stand behind our coat of arms, stand behind what we believe in? And that's an important question for each person. How far are you willing to go with what you believe, with individuals, with groups, at work, society, all those different areas that we're involved with every day? How far would you go? So we're going to take the time, the bulk of the time now, to actually take out a pen and turn the page over and start designing your coat of arms, what you're about, and usually it's a triangle, but if you want to make it something else, that's okay. But who are you? What are you? You know, how would you describe yourself? Other than God, country, and honor.
Do you have an example? Do you have one?
Okay. My coat of arms, and I've thought about it for ages, and I've had several of them, but one of them is gratitude. And that's there because I hate to use the word hate, pardon me, but I hate ingrates. I have
Hate what?
ingrates, people who are not grateful. I have such a deep loathing for ingrates, going back to the time I was a child, and I watched so many people take advantage of other people who gave to them. We would have knocks on our door 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning pretty regularly, and my father would stumble out of bed and open the door, and there would be some countryman who just arrived in America with his broken suitcase tied together with rope. Viganis, how are you? My father, who? Someone gave him the name of my father. He comes from the same island as my father. He's here. Not a pot to piss in, no job, no work, nothing. And my father would take him in, give him a place to stay, feed him, give him a job, money, even send people to school. He did this any number of times, and not one of these people ever returned anything in simple kindness even. And when my father was pretty destitute and dying, where were they? They were gone, long gone. And then they came to the funeral, and the Greek tradition, the Greek Orthodox Church, is you kiss the forehead of the departed. And I watched these people going past my father, kissing his forehead, and I wanted to kill every one of them because they were all ingrates. So I have a deep, deep feeling about ingratitude in general. And so part of my coat of arms is gratitude. Another part of my coat of arms is loyalty. I believe that we must be loyal to the things we believe in, to the people who are part of our life. It goes hand in hand with gratitude. So that's 2 parts of my coat of arms. The third part has always been family, cornerstone of my life. Loyalty, gratitude, family. So that's been my coat of arms. I have several others, but to me, that when I think about what I really believe in and what I would stand by and fight for, that's what it is. Does that answer your question? Give you? Again, it's got to be something that is you, that you believe in, and that you would stand behind, as opposed to all this sloganism and all these, big words about, God, country, and honor, and all the rest. So whenever someone comes up with something, and what I'd like each person to do as you're coming up with some design is to actually spell it out in your own way, why that's your coat of arms, what it means to you, how you would stand behind it, etc., and so on. To give you another glimpse of another part of that while you're still continuing to work on it, another one of my coat of arms would be truth, confrontation, health. So, again, make it real, what you are really about.
I had trust, but I think truth is maybe hits a little.
Do you find this thought-provoking?
Yes.
Have any of you ever done this before?
No, I did it in 5th grade.
I'll bet you had fun doing it there.
Yeah, it was really fun. But that was defined by my parents, coat of arms more.
The Brits, of course, are known for their coat of arms. Everyone who's a member of the House of Lords, traditionally have their coat of arms, going back centuries, I'm sure. And the Irish, of course. I wonder why we don't do that kind of thing within our family structure and our society more often. We have, like each state has a state, what do you call it? Seal or something like that. It could be a bird, it could be a fish, it could be a flower.
As I was coming here, thinking about coming here this week and knowing the title, I thought about, I was just thinking about coat of arms and how I perceive coat of arms, and what came to my mind was, what shield would I put up? What would the shield, if I put up outside of my home, or if somebody was in my life, what shield would I put up, and what would it say if they were being harmful and I put that shield? What would they read, and how would that affect my actions to them? Yeah.
I like the idea, put the shield up, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because that's also standard with coat of arms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's also a clear illustration of, what you're basically telling
Mm-hmm.
everyone.
Mm-hmm.
That you're putting it up so it's a design. It actually can be seen by people.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what all these slogans and these monuments and the rest are supposed to do. It's supposed to actually tell the world that this is what we're about and what we do, like the words at on the Statue of Liberty. And again, the only question is, are they truthful? Does it ring true? Another question we might ask ourselves as we're doing this, how many of us could really live up to the 12 Boy Scout laws? Are we trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent?
Those were Girl Scout laws too.
Yep, I'm sure. But having not been a member of the Girl Scouts, I was not fully aware of that. They didn't integrate the two back then. I don't know if they do now.
I was in Girl Scouts, but I don't feel like I really.
Oh,
I
we
don't
had a
remember
really,
what they are. I don't feel
we
like
had
they're
a
really
really
nice.
strong Girl Scout upbringing.
Okay.
Yeah, that was in New England. I don't know what it was like here in the other coast, but I did Cub Scouts with my boys and Boy Scouts, and gave them some good basic.
I'll tell you one other thing about that. I would strongly suggest to any individual or family that they have a copy of the Scout Handbook, because that's a valuable,
Absolutely, first aid techniques.
everything. Stuff
Great.
in there is really top-notch. It's been revised so many times and updated, which also makes sense, but they don't leave it stay the same way. They improve it constantly. Certainly something I would add to my coat of arms that I believe I have lived up to and I believe in deeply is hospitality.
Oh, we gotta put a pineapple on there.
Among those things that I did respect about Greek people was their hospitality. I always found that to be an immensely important thing, to be greeted by people in a way that made you feel good, made you feel wanted. Go to someone's home and you feel like you're a member of their family. It's the way it should be. So hospitality is not something to be just thought of as a side thing, as an incidental thing. It can be very, very important. One of the reasons I love Newfoundland so much. Very hospitable human beings, wherever you go. I was amazed at that. You know, I never walked into a home where I did not feel welcomed. Even poor families, you know, whatever they...
Cup of tea?
A cup of tea at least, crumpet, something, you know.
Yeah.
I can't say that of the people I grew up with. My sense memory now of all of those people, maybe a dozen close friends. I was in every one of their homes, at least 5 or 6 times. Only once was I ever offered anything. Only once. It's out of maybe...
Where's this?
In Brooklyn.
Oh, in Brooklyn.
Right.
Well, New Yorkers aren't met. Oh, you know.
But that's a strange thing. I'd never thought of that until just a moment ago. That I went, and the one time I was offered something, I was deeply moved. It was maybe a week after my father died, and one of my friends invited me to his home, and his mother prepared a beautiful, beautiful meal. And I remember sitting there feeling so overwhelmed by it, you know, that someone was thoughtful enough to do that. It reminded me of my father and what he would do, because even at the worst of times, when you came into our home, he always cooked and prepared something for people. So I don't mean to go off on a tangent about hospitality, but it's for most people, yeah, it is definitely.
Now what we have to do is go home and try to design it on our computer.
Yeah.
And print it out.
How many of you will put it on your door?
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
David, you done? Or are you still working on it?
No, I'm done.
Okay, we'll start in a couple minutes. We'll give everyone a couple more minutes. And Mo, I hope you're watching up there and giving us your blessings and your encouragement.
Do you have Wi-Fi here, Nick?
I don't even know what it is.
Oh, a Wi-Fi, so we can get on the internet.
I'm not sure. I'm very backward with those things, so again, I'm still
Well,
doing the one-finger typing, you know. I've seen that term in, you know, places, and people have mentioned it to me, but you'll forgive me if that's not one of my, it's not part of my coat of arms at all. Never has been.
If there's a coffee shop nearby, you might be
Yeah, I
able
was
to get
gonna
on.
say, right near here. I might be able to get on there.
I'm thinking you might not have a server.
Yeah.
When Michael comes back in, he would
No,
know.
I'll know soon enough, no. Or either that or it's got a code on it, yeah. But it would be kind of a fun thing, graphic to put together.
No, I'm old school. I think that there is no place for clip art on the coat of arms.
Clip art is jokes. Yeah, clip art is jokes, but a real, like a Welsh lion, because we have their Scottish coat of
Okay,
arms for
yep.
our family,
Yep.
and they're gutsy.
Uh-huh.
I claim the Scottish side, not the Irish side.
I wonder what Count Dracula's coat of arms was.
Transylvania.
Pennsylvania,
actually.
right? Yeah, I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
They
yeah,
probably have a manly one, yeah.
I'll bet.
Blood dropping off the harness.
Yeah. Okay, let's start. Whoever wants to.
Sure, I'll volunteer. Mine has got a tree up the middle, kind of a tree of life. I'm a strong believer that we have to protect the nature that we're surrounded by, and often we take Mother Nature for granted, but it's the basis under which we all live. At the top of my tree, I've got family and community. I've got an airplane. I happen to work for Boeing, and I love airplanes, but it's explore. It gives us the opportunity to go places and discover new things. I've got a book that's for learning and growth. I've got a bike rider here that says health, and that's twofold, because not only by keeping healthy can we support these other things, but I'm also a strong believer that if we try harder, we don't need to drive everywhere. On the middle of my tree, I've got nature, and then underneath that, I've got optimism, sharing gifts, being thankful, and commitment. I'm a strong believer that, you know, I'm not going to be a flavor of the day kind of person. If I'm committed to a relationship, a job, raising my children, or a community service, it'll be in for the long haul. And then I just love your phrase, what upholds my existence. So those are the things that I should be able to live by, and from that I get love, I get joy, I get laughter, but those are the values that I then apply. So that's what I've got.
You want to just correct one thing when you refer to what upholds your existence? It's Tucker's. I want to give him credit always for that, because it certainly is a coat of arms type of thing. And I also like the tree kind of thing. It reminded me of the fact that I have a design of that also that I've forgotten. It's been so many years. But that's often a typical kind of coat of arms thing, the tree and the branches and connections in so many different ways. So and I love the word commitment, of course. I think that should be part of everyone's coat of arms. Yeah. It certainly goes without saying, because without it, we're going to remain pretty weak in the truest sense of what weakness really is, because we're all faced with challenges, and the only way we're going to surmount them is to be committed to whatever it is that we're doing. Otherwise, we're going to fall back over and over and over again. Someone else? Barbara?
Mine's in the shape of a heart. It's going to be funny looking, because it's got two Welsh lions on either side. Well, I call them Welsh lions, but the I don't know what you'd call them, Celtic lion, one on either side for father and mother. And I would have a world map, a circle of the world, and consciousness, compassion, honesty, a caduceus for medical support, nature, nurture, and love. And do I do it That's my feeling.
The one that strikes me that comes out the most of those is compassion. Certainly is another area that we should excel in. I don't believe compassion should ever be compromised. I think all too often it is for one reason or another. And being compassionate certainly is a major goal, ambition, objective for all of us, I think. It should be. I like the heart idea also.
Yes, we have actually so many neurons in our heart, just as you were talking about your gut feeling. Well, you have those nerve fibers inside your heart, and when people feel pain in their heart, it's telling the brain it hurts, but it's really starting in the heart.
Somebody else.
So I had a tree as well, because I love nature and I love trees, and it brings me a lot of joy walking in the woods and just communing with trees. So one of mine is gratitude, because if you're not grateful, the opposite is entitlement, basically, which is not a very loving, giving place to be. So gratitude is very important to me, and so I haven't quite pinned down some of the words, but like loving kindness, and maybe it's compassion, but connection with people in a loving, kind way, just approaching people that way. And the other one was honor, trust, and that has to do with listening to my inner self and standing up and doing the right thing no matter what. And so basically following what I know is right. And I think about that and think about, you know, that's difficult to do in the stand.
And unfortunately, we don't have much in the way of models to really guide us in some way when it comes to that. The whole idea of honor in general is, I think, a huge sore point in American history. Again, we're not very honorable when you get right down to it. And we compromise that honor a great deal politically, economically, and many other ways. Again, how honorable can we be to knowingly be doing business with the country we demonized, China, for so long, while at the same time we refuse to even begin to solve our problems with neighboring countries like Cuba. So how honorable are we? How honorable can we be as a nation when we allow drug companies to destroy human life, literally, every single day, while at the same time we imprison over 1 million human beings for selling a small amount of marijuana? How honorable is that? And how honorable can we be knowing these things?
Or allowing the sex trade that happens.
Sex trade, right? You could go on and on. You could see so many of these things. How honorable?
Talked about.
Yeah. How honorable can we be? And how honorable can we be when we do not confront and challenge these things? When we put on the blinders and we walk away? How honorable can we be when we see so many people out there with cardboard signs on corners saying veteran, homeless? How honorable are we? I remember what happened, I don't know if you remember, after the First World War, there was a lot of talk about helping the veterans. And the Congress actually approved a veterans bonus. And then there was nothing but problems, and the veterans marched on Washington. These were our doughboys who went out there to Europe and, you know, fought for us, fought for the world, lost arms and legs. They had the bonus march, and they set up a camp in Washington. There were about 10,000 of them. And the government ordered the troops in on them. Ironically, two of the military leaders who were given the assignment to break up this camp were General MacArthur, he was not a general then, and Major Dwight D. Eisenhower. Yeah. And they went in, and when the marchers, the bonus marchers, the veterans, saw the military coming, they thought they were coming in support of them.
Yeah.
So they just were waving and greeting them. And the military came in and destroyed the camp. A number of people were killed, including some women and children. And this was how we honored our veterans.
Wow, what year was that?
I'm guessing now 26, 27, somewhere in that period of time after the war, because the whole thing about the bonus had been going on for so long, and these people, and then the Depression had set in, and the people were desperate for that bonus. Mm-hmm. To those people, a few $100s meant, you know, survival. And that's what we did. And again, this is not the opinion of Nickolas Vassili, this is a historical fact. You know, if you ever want to read up on that, that's how we honored our veterans. And how we're honoring them today in 2013 with people standing on corners with cardboard signs saying, I'm a veteran, I'm homeless, help me. Again, how we stand behind things as opposed to the hypocrisy is what always gets to me. And how much compassion do we have for those people?
I got a wonderful email recently that suggested that everybody that's in Congress working for the government and everything has to have the same insurance as the rest of the country, that their retirement is the same in the country. They work for 4 years in Congress, they get 4 years of retirement. and that they were suggesting we have a new amendment so that that's the way, you know, everybody gets to follow through that. No pet deals, I'll pass it on. It's a good thought.
Someone else. Anyway, I'm not going to... Oh.
I'll go. So I have, the first thing that I have is trust. Again, I want, you know, I think I have a daughter, and she and I just live together. It's just us two. So I just think about the home that I want to create and the things that I want her to walk out of the home with. And I want us to be able to trust each other. I want her and I both to have self-respect and good self-care. Because I think that when you take care of yourself, it gives you the power and the ability to care for others. And the third one is laughter. You know, with a 6-year-old girl and with a 35-year-old woman, it eases so much. It makes the day so much brighter when you have laughter. And if you can't incorporate it into your life, it's just a heavy, 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 heavy heart. And motivation. I want her to know that I'm always, you know, motivated to, you know, teach her and keep her going, and I'm motivated to see her grow, and I want her to feel that motivation in her own life, and know that I'm always going to be developing with her, even as I get old. So those are mine.
How old is your daughter?
She's 6.
6.
Mm-hmm.
Laughter, yeah, indeed.
And
Even at the worst of times. I think it's why it certainly should be up there with everything else that's important. Somebody else?
I'm still working on mine a little bit, but the words that kind of always come to my mind are health, happiness, and love. I think for me, love incorporates a lot of different things. It incorporates encouragement of somebody else, allowing them to really be themselves. You know, it even encourages, well, it certainly includes expressing, allowing that person to truly be themselves and express themselves, having the freedom to be oneself, and providing an atmosphere for that to occur. It even includes confrontation, really, the way that I think of love. It doesn't mean that you can't ever say anything negative to somebody. It means that, you know, all feelings are accepted for anyone involved. That means a lot of giving, means effort, means, and you know, I might add another word of people as another word, being, you know, all people, that we should have much more focus on people versus the things that we do focus on. And also in love, with love includes gratitude and loyalty, and giving. Another word I'm thinking of is effort, because it takes effort to love. It takes effort to, you know, to be happy. It takes effort to do anything worthwhile. And I feel that you know, having health and love and people and effort is what brings happiness. I've spent a lot of my life trying to find happiness, and I'm not sure, I think, and so, yeah, I have those are the things that I would say that ultimately result in happiness. Oh, and I was also thinking of having a lion and a heart, like you do, but I would probably add some more. Oh, lion is for bravery, and which I don't really have words on for that so much, but they're in there somewhere.
On the note of love, I might interject that Hindu Balabhachi again. It actually incorporates many of the things you mentioned in there. You could easily fit in any one of those things in Balabhachi, as Thakur really meant it. The true nature of love, kindness, thoughtfulness, caring, concern, everything that you could possibly throw in from the kitchen sink should be included, literally, in that idea of love. And we've got lions and other. Mine has always been, as far back as I can remember, certainly from my 19 years of age, the aardvark.
You know, what is the the aardvark? Where'd you get that name?
Actually, overseas, we had a theater group that I'd started, and someone one day gave me a tie clasp of an aardvark. And I didn't wear a tie, but I put it, except because when we were doing theater, I didn't do it in military uniform. So I put it on me, and someone asked what it was, and I said, I don't know much about it except that it's an aardvark. And someone looked it up and said, well, it's the first word in the dictionary, and it's considered the oddball of the animal kingdom. I said, oh, that fits me and us perfectly. So we became known as the aardvarks. And when my first wife and I started our theatrical company in New York City, we sat all night trying to think of a name, and I kept thinking aardvark, aardvark, and she said, let's make it Aardvark Abbey, a place where oddballs can come together and gather together. And that I like very much also, hence aardvark so my coat of arms has the aardvark there. It's kind of an anteater, of course, which comes out at night. I guess
Long nose.
Long nose, yeah. Someone else, Bob.
Well, I started off with the very simplistic idea of just putting a triangle with a circle around it and putting your three words, freedom, justice, over equality. And I realized that there's only three, and basically there's four elements, and so I expanded out and put a pentacle among a circle. And in symbology, the four elements are, I put the four elements anyway, basically fire on the lower left, the cup, which is water and food, nurturing, on the lower right, and above the cup I put the sword, which is air. This is rather out of the tarot cards, the symbology. I'm a gifted reader, by the way. And then the pentacles is in the upper left-hand quadrant. And in the middle symbolizes the major arcana, the magician, who uses these four elements for the good of all, and actually becomes a leader doing so, living by example, rather than just intellectualizing. He actually does it. And then there's four colors to go with the four elements. And part of this is to realize that I cannot come up with anything new, that all thought has been thought before, and for me to involve myself in what's already been established, and yet it's in our culture to not talk about it from that point of view. Because of, and it's not in our culture to talk about it from that point of view because of the reasons that you have on the front side of the page. I would like to get your point of view on at what time are we actually committing contempt of court to show disrespect for our authority figures, because our authority figures they're corrupt. Our whole system needs a rework. Now, how do we talk about the rework without just blatantly being contempt of court?
Well, I think it's up to each individual to find their own particular way. I don't think it's a matter of what we say excuse me, or how we confront, but rather what our objective is. Where are we going with that? When we see all of this stuff that's going on, that's so objectionable, that's so corrupt, what can be done? I mean, when you look at things for what they really are, and going back to what I said previously, I don't see how anything can happen to change the nature of our course unless we tackle the major obstacle, which is the Constitution. I mean, that's what our laws are about. Everything is about that Constitution and how it's interpreted. No matter what, everything that gets to the Supreme Court. So now they're going to be dealing with new issues again, including same-sex marriage, the marijuana issue, all this stuff. Ultimately, lawyers sit together and interpret the Constitution, and that's what governs the corruption. That's the cause and effect. It all comes from that same Constitution and the way it's interpreted by the corrupt lawmakers who are entrenched or who have the power and don't want it to be changed.
Who are we the people?
We should be we the people. That's what we should be. But again, what we the people has boiled down to is vote every 2 years, every 4 years, for one millionaire lawyer or the other to be president. That's who we the people are. We should be much stronger. The people who are battling throughout the world against oppression, you know, what happened in Egypt last year was a good example of we the people. The people finally said enough already, we don't want this, and now they're starting it again. The old story of, as Tucker put it so perfectly, what is the point of chasing out the lion if only to bring in the jackals? That's happened there, that keeps happening, and it will happen unless you actually change the foundation of things. And the foundation of things is the Constitution. That's what has supposedly upheld our existence as a nation. Whenever we talk about the Constitution. That's what made us unique. That's what really made America special, this Constitution. It was like, wow, something to really govern people, something that really represents we the people. And I can't go so far as to say that all the people who designed that Constitution really were honorable. They didn't include anti-slavery measures, etc., and many other things in that Constitution. But giving them the benefit of the doubt and saying they intended to do something really vital and new, you know, for we the people. Okay, but this is now hundreds of years later. What is it, 275 odd years later? And that Constitution doesn't represent we the people.
Well, my feeling is with the last election, we the people did speak. I think that we spoke louder than we have in the past. Really.
How so?
Because Obama won, and there is at least some compassion for health care for all, and I think that's one of the reasons that people supported it. That there's, you know, more of a compassion, and that money can buy this election.
I can't agree with you on either of those points, Barbara. but that's which. I don't think any election in this country goes without being bought. I mean, more money was spent on this election. What's the total?
Billions.
Billions of dollars, and much more money in this election than ever before. And most of that money is given by corporations and
That's
people.
correct, but they didn't win this time, is my premise.
Well, one of them won. There was only one. Both of them were doing the same thing.
Which one was offering a medical care to take care of helping, you know?
Neither.
At least starting.
Neither. From my point of view, to answer that question, neither. Obama merely took the plan that was Romney's originally in
Correct.
Massachusetts and basically sold out to the insurance companies. I mean, the objective of all the people who had been fighting for a new healthcare system was single coverage, not insurance companies. We wanted to get rid of the insurance companies.
Right.
What Obama did was basically say, come back in, come here. We want more insurance company stuff. And
Well,
now we're mandated. Now we're going to go to, we have to go to these people.
Well, what I'm finding with the population that I'm working with, people do have health care that they didn't have
Some of them,
before Obamacare. So to me, that is a step in the right direction
Okay.
towards a more, a health care for all, which we absolutely need to have. It's a step.
We stand in total disagreement, but that's okay. We can agree to disagree on that one.
Absolutely.
Okay. Did that cover some of the things you were feeling or thinking
Some
about?
of. However, I see something, the Constitution, sure, we have to go by that thought. why is it that the individual, I think it has to come down to the individual, not the Constitution, that everybody has to look at their morals and take action themselves, and only then change will happen. But there's this,
Couldn't agree more, absolutely,
there's
absolutely.
something in our childhoods, the way I was raised in a dysfunctional family, you do not buck authority no matter what they're telling you, no matter how absurd the dad's rants. Do not buck authority, and unfortunately our court system, our legal system is based that because that exists in our childhood, that they are given omnipotent power over our adulthood, and we all stay in our little place out of fear of others' opinions, fear of this God authority, that our legal system has more power than it deserves.
Yeah, we are frightened, and we don't have the character to overcome that fear. It's as basic as that. Going back to what I said earlier about Muhammad Ali. Yeah, when you have to say Muhammad Ali, you know, and he was well aware of what was at stake in his life. You know? And he stood there and he just said, no, that's all. And we can all do that. And we all should do it. We need courage, and we need commitment. We need a coat of arms to stand behind. And then we just have to do it. It's all in the doing, yeah. And I couldn't agree more. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Well, no, that's okay. I feel like there's a lot of cynicism here. And we can externalize and we can blame everybody else for the problems in our world. And goodness knows, I mean, this society is not perfect. And you can go to any society, and I don't care which eon or which part of the world that you go to, you will find corruption, you will find poverty, you'll find abuse, terrible things. So I think some of the people were saying, you know, it's on us. It's commitment, it's integrity, it's the ability to make change. And even if it seems insurmountable to do it tops down, we don't find that one perfect leader who then goes through and drives Congress and the Supreme Court to do the right thing. But we have the ability to do it individually. You know, take our piece of the world and make the change and make the peace. And you know, that gives me a lot of optimism, because I find that I can go out and make a small incremental change that affects a child or a family that I didn't know yesterday or 2 years ago. And from that, it can cascade. And it can cascade upward. It doesn't just have to be this tops down. Because no, I don't have a lot of faith that the Carnegies and the robber barons are really out to protect us and be benevolent, you know.
Right.
But I'm not going to get bent out of shape over the fact that there are those people out there.
Absolutely.
You know?
Because you can't change
There's
that.
nothing
That's
you can do
right.
about that.
That's right.
That's the whole idea, and the whole ideal. Again, it always starts with the individual, and that's why it's important for us to apply all of the things that we do believe in. That's why it's important that if we have a coat of arms, we live by it and do everything in our power to stand behind it. Absolutely. At the same time, if you want to be a loudmouth and speak out against all the corruption and scream at the wind, go ahead and do it as well.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it, the Martin Luther marches where people were putting their life and their limb on the line to make change.
Yeah.
And they did. They made change, you know. So there are times for those huge public protests and to make that statement.
We need to keep doing that, and we need to build upon it, and we need to have an objective also. Often the masses, we the people, don't have a voice because there's really no objective involved in what they're doing, and they find themselves kind of lost. You know, where do I go with all of this energy and what I believe in and what I want? And there's where we look around for someone who is a leader, we look around for a model, and unfortunately we don't have enough of those people. The whole thing that we have to be aware of now with all of these coat of arms what does prevent us from living by these things, standing behind them? I want you to think about that for a bit, because that's really the crux of the matter. How far can you go with what we're talking about here? I mean, yeah, all the we the people stuff and the individual stuff, great. But what stops us from doing it? When it comes right down to it, I mean, it's not like someone has got the gun behind our head again and saying, don't stand up for what you believe in, don't stand up for what you feel, don't fight the good fight, and no one's doing that. But yet, so few people are doing it. And it takes, unfortunately, usually it takes a disaster, catastrophe, something to get the people to finally recognize what's going on. And often that's too late. So what prevents us?
I've read some books on that subject that were written after World War II, analyzing the German society, that it was the good people they had elected that they followed. And how is it the good people were the ones who committed the atrocities and that the masses blindly followed? And that's the basis of this dysfunctional family where dad's a tyrant, he's ranting, and then fears built up later on in life that people did not step up going, hey, wait a minute. They blindly did their job. Accountants counted numbers and had no idea that those were bodies. Inventories were taken, everything was orderly. Why is our society so orderly? The German people dared ask that question, and there was a great social awareness awakening sometime after World War II, because also after World War I and all the wars and how we are too much warrior-like and we have to come from a different place. But again, it took an atrocity for the masses to step up and go, wait a minute, that finger points back at me.
Well, on the German side of things, they were petrified. They would have gotten shot.
Mm-hmm.
If they didn't follow the orders, you're gone too.
The fear of the gun to the head.
Sure, and I knew Catholics that were in Germany during World War II, and if you still believed in went to the Catholic Church, you were threatened going to school. Your children were threatened going to school to be destroyed. I mean, it was pretty frightening for the German people. So, how he managed to get that strength, hypnotist.
He was the greatest hypnotist of the century.
It's really incredible, because there were a lot of people that didn't want to be doing what they were doing, but they were afraid that they were going to die too.
Mm-hmm.
So they followed the orders.
They also wanted, you've got to remember also historically, that they wanted a leader.
Mm-hmm.
The German people wanted a leader. They wanted a Führer. And here you had the man who had the charisma and the skills, including the military skills. And as I've said, not humorously, but realistically, had it not been for the fact that Adolf Hitler became an amphetamine addict, we would all be speaking German now.
Mm-hmm.
So it really came down to, he had the war won.
Mm-hmm. My husband said if they had the media that they have now, we'd be speaking German.
What prevents us from living by what we believe in? Think about that in your own life. What would prevent you from living by that coat of arms?
Fear.
Fear is always there.
Self-doubt.
Self-doubt.
It's of the mind.
Huh?
It is of the mind rather than reality, I am finding out.
I said bad habits.
Bad habits. Weakness. Tucker used the term weakness in relationship to this most frequently, and often said wage war on weakness. And I think it's linguistically better that way in examining what stops you to say weakness, because you can see weakness has a particular shape and feel to it when you're being weak. And it is weakness, basically. It's a weakness within our character and our personality. And that weakness allows us to be intimidated, give in to our fear, and then put the blinders on That's what we do. So we have to look at our own individual lives and say, where are we weak? How does that weakness show itself? When are we weak? And how does that contribute to our inability to do what we believe in and stand for what we want to stand for in every area? I mean, you've got to look at the whole total picture again, as opposed to just selecting comfortable zones. I've mentioned the human mosaic, you know, and so I'd like you to take a look at that again. See yourself as this mosaic fragmented into 60,000 odd pieces. Where are the weak parts? Where does the weakness come in? When do you feel weak? It's another thing to question in yourself and challenge in yourself. At what times, at points, daily, weekly, monthly, whenever, do you give in to the weakness? Will you basically dishonor yourself and do not stand up for what you believe in? When does that happen? Why? What's the cause and effect? Give a minute or so of thought to that. Try and find those trigger points, those moments. Anyone want to start?
When I'm criticized.
When you're criticized. How many people can identify with that?
That was mine, especially if it's if it's presented in a demeaning way, you know, shaming way.
What weakness does that trigger in you when that happens?
When I'm criticized, I had it so much growing up that it makes me feel insecure. Do I have the tools? Do I have the background to fight for what I believe in? And luckily, I do now. And I'm like a dog with a bone. But I remember even...
Will that be on your coat of arms?
Oh, yeah, dog with a bone.
I like that's okay.
Oh, what was I going to say? That when I'm overtired is another time.
How many people can identify with that one? And that can be a basic just defense. You know, when we're overtired, or we indulge in the idea that we're overtired, because most often we're not. But it can be a safe way to cop out. I'm just too tired now to do something, you know. Someone else?
I do it with food, like not bothering to make something healthy. Just eat something else that I know I don't want to eat.
And how does that in turn affect you in other ways?
Well, I think it pulls me down in general. You know, I know at times where I'm really on top of the food, I feel on top of other things too. And I've noticed exercise is another place, like I stall like mad before doing exercise. Really aware that that's one of my biggest places.
Well, who can identify with that? Yeah, there's a biggie, and certainly what you're touching on is not an ordinary safe weakness, but one that is basically potentially devastating. Again, to reflect back on the healthcare question. My general attitude about that is that we're looking in the wrong direction. Our objectives are totally wrong. We've wasted so much time and energy and money talking about healthcare system as opposed to health. We don't hear any talk about health. No president, stops and says, hey, okay, we've got to take care of the system, and we got a lot of problems there, and it's a matter of money, and a matter of jobs, and a matter of God knows what else we all know about, but why don't we talk about our health? What the hell is wrong with us? Why are we so unhealthy? Why are we so depressed, so obese? Why do we suffer from so much cancer, so much heart disease and stroke and diabetes and high blood pressure and all that? That's what we should be addressing. But there's the weakness. As a society, collectively, we are extremely weak in the area of health. Again, forget the healthcare system. I'm not talking about what, I'm talking about health. Is not that a great, huge weakness within us? And I'll tell you, of all the things that I have had to confront and deal with among all the people I've worked with for these 48, 50 years, the one area in which people do not want to finally deal with is health. They absolutely refuse to. Again, of all the classes we've held, I think we probably have more fun in the breathing and stretching class. But in terms of the actual effect on people, change-wise, doing-wise, minimal. Minimal. People don't want to deal with that huge weakness of health. And consequently, millions, tens of millions, 150 million people are going toward disaster, are set up for absolute disaster. And that's, again, not a matter of opinion, but we're going to get old, we're going to break down, and we're going to aid the breakdown. We're going to push ourselves toward the breakdown. Instead of slowing it down and saying, I don't want this, I want to be healthy, we're going to go in that direction. And God knows I battle with people every damn day, And you've heard me describe, that person who came in, on the arm of her husband, 180 pounds, overweight, could not walk, could barely breathe, and looked at all of this equipment and said, I can't do that. I mean, I'm not exaggerating, the ferocity behind it, like the devil is there, the snakes, and the refusal, So there is a major, major weakness within our society and within us as individuals. And if we don't challenge that, we're going to hell on a rocket ship.
I don't know if you guys have seen this video, but there's a man, it's going through the internet right now, but there's an obese man that wanted to lose weight. And he wanted to do it, the first thing that he wanted to do was kind of do yoga. Has anybody seen this?
No.
So he was like contacting yoga instructors and trying to get people to kind of help him. I mean, he was morbidly obese. I think he had like something maybe slightly handicapped. I can't remember exactly, but and nobody would back him up. Nobody would take him under their wing and help this guy. And this one yoga instructor that actually wasn't in the same, I don't know where he lived, but he ended up finding him over the internet, and they worked through it through the internet, and the guy did end up losing weight and becoming into a more health state for himself, and it was interesting to watch. So I think it's on YouTube. You can probably Google it.
Again, just to be redundant for a moment, then we'll go on. That issue of health is perhaps the most vital link to our weakness, to really look at it. Because if we're not healthy, then how much can we do? How much effort can we put into anything? How much energy? How much commitment? Because so much of our time is going to be spent being unhealthy. And as we get older, it's going to drain us. I mean, again, I tell you, I work at these places with, these facilities, and I go there every week, and I just walk out of there, and I sit in my car, and I cry. People are dying. They shouldn't have been there in the first place. But they refused, and I've told you this also, how many of them will tell me after 5 or 6 weeks of working with me, they'll get angry and hostile and say, why didn't I do this? Why didn't someone force me? Why wasn't I given the chance to do this then? Yeah. Instead of waiting and waiting and waiting until I'm like this in a wheelchair. So when you think about what's preventing you from being and becoming the person you want to be and become, you better take a look at that weakness related to health. Otherwise, you're in big, big trouble. Anything else? What else prevents us from living by what we believe in, by that coat of arms?
For me, distraction. Just letting my mind go off and not stopping it and really focusing on what I need to do, think at that moment.
Distraction, yeah, is a something we can identify with. Certainly, we get distracted by so many things, and we do need greater focus. Whenever I watch someone who is totally focused, I'm studying that individual. I've mentioned Steven Spielberg. It was such a wonderful, wonderful experience working with him for 3 months, because I saw a person who was always focused, with all the details of a huge movie set and hundreds of people, you know, including dozens of children and crews and everything else. Totally focused, always in the present, always aware, not allowing himself to be distracted. So, yeah, you might look at that area of your life. Where are the distractions? Every day. What pulls you away from your focus? And you'll find probably a dozen different things. Any others?
Shame.
Shame. Explain.
I happen to have a disease, and it scared my wife, and her fear caused shame in me. I took it personally that she had this fear, and therefore I was wrong, and that shame went very deep.
That can certainly interfere in things. Shame and guilt also.
Yeah.
Guilt is as insidious as anything in our lives, and most often happens in childhood and then continues, and we're not even aware of how it's working against us so often. Anything else preventing us from?
I have a thought that comes up, oh, it doesn't matter. So like, I wanted to see this play, this holiday play, comedy, and my friend booked the time, and it was over this session today. And I was like, at first I was like, oh. I was like, oh, well, okay, I can, yeah, I want to go. And then when I looked at it, I was like, no, this is my commitment. But it was like, you know, it won't matter. This once won't matter. This one cookie won't matter. 6 times a day, it won't matter. You know, so it kind of becomes insidious.
Yeah, the "it won't matter" can be a very, very negative element involving not moving forward in life, because it's the exact opposite of making everything meaningful. If you have an actor who says about a line, well, it doesn't matter, so we'll just say it this way. You know what that does to the production, you know? One word, one line, one tiny attitude about it doesn't matter pulls it down. Where you're supposed to be lifting it up, giving it greater meaning. And of course, when things don't matter, and as you said, the commitment is weakened.
And you say you don't matter. That's what
Right.
you're saying to yourself.
Exactly right. Everything should have meaning and everything should matter. At the same time, we've got to not treat life so seriously and laugh at things. So there's a combination of qualities that we've got to be utilizing almost simultaneously. Because sometimes people think that, well, if you're being too serious, you know, then that's a difficult thing, and if you're being too light about it, so where do you find the proper ground for common sense? There's a time for everything, and there's a time to be light and laugh, but that doesn't take away from the meaning of something. Anything that takes away from meaning, it weakens us. Any other things, a few minutes that we've got left, that prevents us from moving forward? Is everyone prepared to commit themselves to your coat of arms? To actually stand by it, live by it, defend it, fight for it? That's the whole ballgame right there. The actual doing. The process comes down to what are you going to do, always. Not the intellectual or the spiritual or philosophical, that's all fine and good to a degree, but ultimately all that matters is what are you going to do? Simple language, no rocket science, no psychology, just what are you going to do? You're going to live by it or not? If you have a coat of arms, if you say, this is me, this is who I am, then do it. Make sense? Easy? No.
I have one more thing actually I thought about that holds us back from moving forward, and I thought it just came to me, lack of support or camaraderie.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be very difficult going at it alone. Nonetheless, you do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm finding that because I'm so passionate about my field, I'm finding doors are opening. People are respecting the passion. They're listening to the passion.
Put that in your coat of arms also, passion.
Passion.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The people who have managed to move the world had a great passion for what they were doing. And I think people who succeed are successful because they feel that passion within themselves. So absolutely, we could close on that note. Fill our lives with passion for what we're doing, and then do it.
From God's on board, each day I dine. From the Bering Straits to Palestine, this spring, this brook will ring the bell. No need of wealth, you're in God's hotel. Motto, so do the same. Let heaven flow. No pills, no